up, everyone? Welcome to Beyond the Court, episode 10. We are so happy that you're here joining us today. We got pretty much a full squad in the building, so special welcome to Nabil, Amir, Anwar, Daryl, and John. And we got a special episode number 10 for number 10. Amir, tell them who we're talking about today.
Today, guys, we're going to be talking about the one and only DeMar DeRozan. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of his bio, and then we'll get right into it, okay? So in 2009, we drafted him 9th overall, and he had a solid rookie season, 8.5 points on 50% shooting. The year after that is when Chris Bosh left our team, and he had his now iconic tweet, "Don't worry, I got us." And he did. He more than doubled his scoring the next year, and in the following years, he had consistent improvement while playing behind Andrea Bargnani. In 2012-2013 season, we traded for Kyle Lowry, and then equally as big, we got rid of Andrea Bargnani. And from that point forward is where we saw them blossom into the duo that we know and love. He played 9 seasons with Toronto and made 5 consecutive playoff appearances with countless memories. They took the Raptors from a trash, bottom-feeding, happy to even think about making the playoffs team to a team with championship or bust expectations. Pre-last season, of course. His highest scoring season was 27.3 points in the 16-17, which is second only to Vince Carter's 27.6. And unfortunately, July 2018, he was traded for Kawhi Leonard, and it was like a gut punch to the city. But in San Antonio, he has continued his improvements, as in the last 2 years, he's posted career highs in field goal percentage, assists, and rebounds. He leaves us as a franchise leader in games played, minutes played, 2-point field goals made, free throws, free throw attempts, and overall points. And in the categories that he's not number one, he is on the top 5 list. So guys, let's get right into it. Like, what are some of your memories of DeMar? And it's going to be mostly positive, and for the negative, I'm hoping to slap that out of them by the end of this episode.
Awesome. So great start, Amir, running off DeMar's accolades as a Raptor as well. So let's just put it out there. Like, Anwar, what was your favorite memory of DeMar during his tenure as a Raptor?
Oh man, there's so many, man. Honestly, like just to pick one would be unfair. There was that one kind of, I believe it was towards the last season he was with the Raptors. It was against Detroit, and I can't remember was it the game was tied or he tied it with this, but it was just that dunk. Y'all remember? Yeah,
Coast to coast.
yeah, man, coast to coast. I think it was for the win. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was.
But regardless, right?
It was
the man
Anthony
got
Tolliver. He put
Over
on a poster,
Tolliver.
bro.
Oh, for
crammed,
sure.
crammed
Yeah.
it on him.
Yeah. So like, I mean, there's lots, right? But like the most recent one that kind of comes to mind is definitely that. And I remember like, I was just sitting on the couch and it's like, what what just happened, right?
Happened.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely that. But just DeMar in general, man. I don't think anybody can argue. One of the greatest Raptors ever, hands down, right? Skills wise, every season that he played with us, he brought something new to the table. Whether it was his drives to the net, which I think he had from before, his amazing mid-range. Every year there was some sort of improvement that he would bring. And, yeah, Amir's right. Like, after Chris Bosh left, I think there was a lot of doubt too, right? It's like, here we go again, like back to the bottom kind of thing, right? And just him kind of putting that pressure on himself with that tweeting it out to the world that, I got us, right? Like, that's huge, man. Like, just to say that, it gives the team motivation, it gives the franchise motivation, it gives the city motivation, like, okay. And then he proved it. I guess where I kind of, and I hate saying it, but it was never his skill that was in question at all. Like he was an amazing baller, amazing hooper. I think just in the playoffs, and it's unfair to say that it's because of him, right? There's so many kind of elements that were in play, so many factors in play. This is a tough East, right? Like with LeBron. Let's not sugarcoat it at all. Even though I personally feel like we could have beaten all those Cavaliers team, but something happened, man. Every time we would face them, and it was not skills. It was like mental for the Raptors, right? And I feel like every time they saw LeBron, every time they faced LeBron, it was like they forgot how to play basketball, right?
Yep.
Um, they forgot like plays, they forgot strategies. It was just like run and gun kind of style, right? I don't know if that was, hate saying it, LeBron's aura, right, or like whatever. But it just felt like they got shook every time, and it wasn't their skill. Like I still feel like deep down, I feel like we could have beaten those teams, right? Like even with LeBron on it, but it was just something. And also, there was the factor of Mr. Casey, right? Like, that was always kind of always there, right? So to me, like DeMar is just for me, it's like top three, right? Top three Raptors. Switch, put him anywhere in the top three, and I'm good, right? So yeah, to me, like you can't take away what he's done for the city. I definitely feel like the jersey should go up, right? At some point, just for like kind of just overall outstanding guy, right? So yeah, man, like I have nothing else to say instead of just a few mental gaps here and there, But other than that, outstanding.
I think for me, the one word that comes to mind for DeMar DeRozan is loyal. I mean, he put the city on his back once Chris Bosh left, and he pretty much held it down. And the one thing that Anwar alluded to is the fact that you saw an improvement from DeMar DeRozan every season. Probably one of the purest mid-range in the game. He started implementing the three-point. So nothing against his skill set, but a specific, I guess, memory that I have is taking this back to New Year's Day of 2018 against the Milwaukee Bucks, coincidentally, where he drops 52 points and sets a career like franchise high. And I think the other two previously to that was Terrence Ross, who was not even in question as one of the greatest Raptors, but Vince Carter, who each had 51. So I think for a lot of people, when he dropped the 52, for some people, it's like, okay, he's already set the other records. The 52 was kind of the icing on the cake, where it's like, okay, now he holds the franchise record in a point per in a game. And I think for them at that point, maybe he would have taken Vince Carter. In some people's eyes, could have been before. But to me, that stands out as probably the fondest memory because I was watching that game and he was not missing. 52 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 3 points made. And at that time, they were sitting number one. Milwaukee was, I believe, 7th or 8th in the East. So it was a potential playoff matchup. So it had a bit of that playoff atmosphere. And DeMar DeRozan came out and played right to the end. We ended up getting the W in overtime, and the rest is history. But I think that for me really stood out as a really big highlight in my mind for DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, just to echo the same sentiments, actually along the same lines. It's loyalty for me that part of the reason why I was so hurt, and I stand by. I was one of the people that didn't actually think the Kawhi deal would work out for us. Obviously, in hindsight, it did, but I openly admit it didn't. But I still to this day still hurts, just because DeMar was so loyal to us all. You knew he always gave 110%. You knew how much it hurt him when that trade happened. And just looking at his career as well, like, he started out with us. He started in the NBA early on. He even said because he wanted to help his mother, actually. His mother was sick, and that's why he started the NBA as early as he did. Like, just to hear stuff like that about the guy, like, it really speaks volumes. He gave us all he could, but unfortunately, like Anwar said as well, you had that LeBron wall. And something happened with LeBron each time. I don't know what it was. I remember there's some games where he struggled a little bit. I have to be upfront about that. We all remember those where, he ripped off his shirt. I remember after a few of them because he was so frustrated with his but all in all, I mean, he had over 12 30-point games in the postseason. So he came through for the most part. It just getting us to that next little level. But I'll always appreciate what he did for the city, and being involved as much as he was just phenomenal. He bled for Toronto, and he was always here for the city.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said, right? Like, it's, thinking back to like a 21-year-old putting out a tweet, right, saying "I got us." I don't even think he was averaging like 15 points a game at that point, right? So for
He
him
was
to
only
even put
averaging
that out there,
8.5.
8.5,
8.5.
right? And to be that confident in your ability and your skill set, it says a lot about a 21-year-old. The other thing about him that I remember is people always used to say he was a gym rat, right? And you've seen that every season, right? Like you guys mentioned, he improved every year, right? Up until that one season where he averaged at 27 points a game. And I think personally, my favorite thing about DeMar is not necessarily the dunks, although they were filthy when he cocked it back and he slammed on them. But so for me, my favorite thing is his footwork. Like his footwork is so underrated. I think there have been a couple players who have said he's got the best footwork in the NBA. I think KD was one of them, and even Kobe, right? So that's high praise, right, coming from those quality type of players. And then of course we all know his mid-range, right, is arguably the best in the game, right? So DeMar got all the skill set, and on top of that he's got loyalty, right? Like it's there was an interview he did after he got traded, and you can just see the hurt in his eyes when he was speaking to the gentleman interviewing him, right? And I actually watched that the other day, and it got to me, right? Because this guy loved the city, man. Like he said, I am Toronto, right? And then for that whole thing to happen, it was just unfortunate. I mean, it did work out for us, but I definitely still miss him, right? And I'm also hoping that maybe down the road we can get him back here and reunite him in Cop, right? So that's where I'm at with DeMar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's so much good when, like, obviously there's negatives too. Like we're not just here. Like like in the playoffs, I'm not gonna say he performed to the best that they could have done, because he didn't. They underperformed in the playoffs. Like when you think of that last year, that was probably in the 17-18. That was probably the strongest version of our team till that point, and it was the weakest version of that Cavs team to that point. To not get a single win, like obviously I think we all knew something had to change. I just don't know if we expected Masai the God to pull that. And
but just before you go on, Amir, like I understand what you're saying, right? But I think a lot of that, like there were a lot of coaching flaws, right, in that playoff run.
Well, Coach
right? Like right? Yeah, like your coach of the year gets fired, right? But to me, like yes, DeMar was a part of that, but a lot of it was like just Casey not calling timeouts when he should have called timeouts, stopping the play. Like he just calling timeouts at the wrong time, right? So I would chalk a lot of that up to him. We see now, like we have like arguably the best coach in the league, right? And I feel confident when he calls a timeout. I know if we need it, he's gonna call it. Casey, I had no idea what was gonna happen.
There's
right?
so
like
much.
It was just like yelling at the TV, like, dude, call a timeout, or like it was just so much frustration.
Well, even if he called timeout, it's not like he had like a amazing Brad Stevens type play drawn up that was going to get us a bucket, right? So it's like it was even like a disaster maybe if he called a timeout unnecessarily. So we just didn't know. It's such a crapshoot with Casey at that time.
But yeah, like so he did, like Masai did end up trading or firing Casey, and then he did end up, like the trade when it went down, it hurt. Like I'm not gonna lie, like it was like, what the hell. And this is how I know I probably could never be a GM, because even though I know once I heard who we got from him, like, yeah, this is the right move, I don't think I could have personally ever pulled that off. Even if I was the GM, I don't think I would have been able to pull the trigger on that trade. Even though Kawhi is like, he's like DeMar level offense with defense, and like a clutch. And the clutch gene, because like although I love DeMar, out of him and Lowry, I always would pick Lowry to take the final shot if it was the final shot over DeMar. Like I feel like DeMar's a body of work, and then Lowry's a finisher.
I think you guys hit it all in terms of just summarizing the good and all the good that DeMar contributed to the Raptors. Like, I mean, the word that comes to me is as well is loyalty, and just how quickly he re-signed with the Raptors. It was literally July 1st at like 12 a.m. and 12:01. That contract was already signed, and there was all these rumors in terms of, is DeMar gonna go to the Lakers? You know, he's from Compton. That affiliation to the Lakers, the appreciation of Kobe. Was he gonna leave the Raptors? And he just put that all to bed so quickly and instantly re-signed. Even that tweet, just the swagger and the confidence to basically say like, you know, I think he was like second year in the league, and what was he averaging a year? Like 8 points a game, 8.5 points a game, and your focal point in Chris Bosh has left the franchise. We're once again wondering what is going to happen to the Raptors, and this second year player is saying, "Don't worry, I got us," and it's just a testament to him that each year, Daryl touched on it as well. He's a gym rat, a workhorse in the gym. Came back with a different repertoire in his game, came back with better handles, really refined his mid-range, really wanted to work on that footwork, almost like a Kobe light in terms of his footwork and really putting it into his game. The one thing that I wish he would have worked on a bit more is defense, is his defensive capabilities, because he is athletic. He is very athletic, and he shows glimpses of defensive ability. I guess it's just when you put so much focus on the offensive end, it takes a lot to also play on the defensive end. So it's like almost you pick and choose. You pick and choose, and you're gonna lose one at the end of it. His relationship with Kyle Lowry, like one of the best quote unquote bromances and connections that you've ever seen between teammates. And that relationship didn't even start that way. Apparently, Lowry was he's just like, yeah, DeMar was quiet when I got here. He didn't even talk to me. He had his crew, and eventually they got together. And Lowry had already foreshadowed that he'd only be with the Raptors for 2 years, and he's out. And that was the whole tinkering. Masai could have blown the entire thing up. Lowry was ready to be traded. DeMar was ready to be traded, and Masai kept it together. And that's when we went on that playoff run as well, right? So I love the boldness. I love the confidence, the swag. I guess the only thing is running into that roadblock in LeBron that I would say was tough. It was tough. I'm not going to pin it on DeMar. I agree. Coaching could have been better. I also wish that I didn't see things like Kyle Korver doing backdoor cuts on DeMar and kind of exposing him defensively. And I think that's the one thing that kind of stood out for me as well. But even guys like Raptors regular season averages over 675 games, DeMar averaged 19.7 points, 4.1 rebounds, 3.1 assists. And in the playoffs, over 51 games, 21.9 points, 4.4 rebounds, and 3.5 assists. So not too shabby numbers, maybe based on volume as well. But he definitely did all he could. And I think for being a 9th overall pick, he accelerated and overshot what people might have seen. I think the difference between DeMar and like what was the element that couldn't get us over LeBron is the star versus the superstar. And a regular all-star versus a superstar who could just kind of will and dominate a game and just completely overhaul the entire situation. So, and even his Raptors winning percentage was 529, so over 53% winning percentage as well. So some key elements there. You guys touched on the trade. The trade, I remember, I think I was at a work conference or something, and then all of a sudden, the messages were flying around and the rumors were flying around, and then you see the deal, right? Like DeMar and Jakob Poeltl for Kawhi Leonard. How did you guys feel when you heard that trade? I know some of you guys touched on it, but just even like letting that sink in, like when that trade went down, how did you guys feel when it overall just got announced?
Oh man, I think I had just woken up because it happened like early morning, right? It's crazy. It was some crazy time. I remember at night the phone was like going off, like ESPN alerts, all this stuff. But I just didn't look. I got up in the morning and I was like, is this real? Like, I thought it was like whatever. And then obviously looking at ESPN, I'm like, oh man, this went down. So I I love DeMar, but I was like, all right, who do we get? Right? Like, and then I think when I saw Kawhi, I was still upset, but at the same time, I was like, okay, right? It helped a bit. It helped a bit. But then, to be honest, when I saw Danny Green, right, I was like, whoa, like that's just not a throw-in, right? Forget how he performed with the Raptors. That's a whole different thing. But initial, like they just threw in Danny Green, like that was huge, right? And then and then I actually started reading about it and like what went down, and here's Masai in Nairobi, I think, kind of pacing back and forth in his hotel or early morning, having his phone and having his number dialed but not hitting send, right? Can you imagine that moment? Like just wild, right? So like that's what I was thinking too at the same time. I'm like, can you imagine that conversation, how that went down, and how hard that must have been for Masai to say it, and on the receiving end, how hard it must have been for DeMar to take it in and like, is this really happening? Like I gave everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was my second kind of thing, but I think it really sunk in when we saw the famous press conference with Kawhi, kind of sitting there, right? It really sunk in, and at that point, like obviously your mind doesn't go to like a championship right away, but you're like, all right, you know what? Masai threw all the chips in. Let's see what happens. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big shocker, man.
I, I I don't know if you guys remember as well. Just to add to that, remember it was a gut punch feeling for me, but I remember there was controversy as well because remember DeMar was told previously that he was okay, nothing was going to happen, he was
Right.
safe,
During
and
the summer league, right? Yeah.
yeah, so he was completely caught off guard, and he had his frame his mind like everything's going to continue forward as is. So he was blindsided as well, and everyone kind of relates to that because once we blindsided, you kind of want to have an impression or some kind of forewarning of what's going to happen. So, but for me, yeah, gut punch to the stomach, and I remember talking to people and just being like, it's a huge mistake, and I know Kawhi's promising, and now I obviously ate those words, but I was just so hurt by it at the time. Like I remember for like that 2-3 weeks solid, I was just like, no, this can't be.
So John, just to kind of probe into that feeling of yours, was it more like someone that was so loyal to Toronto had now been traded and we're essentially bringing in an unknown? Like we didn't know what was going to happen with Kawhi, right? But we're essentially losing such a staple, someone who represented Toronto and literally said, I am Toronto, and was going to give it his all. Is that what kind of was the feeling was for you, John, that we had lost that?
That's what it was, and I felt like those few seasons where we got into the playoffs, and yes, Cleveland did take care of us, but I felt as though we were putting pieces and we were going to get there, and I was so hopeful. And then I was just concerned because I thought, Kawhi's supposed to come, but he had injuries. Is he going to play for us? What's happening? It was just a big question mark for me. And I'm the type of personality where I like to keep things kind of steady and grow. Whereas to me, this is just a huge change to flip everything upside down. And I was shocked, like most people were, I guess.
Oh, it was a huge gamble for sure. Like, if we didn't win the championship, this conversation would be completely different, right? Like, it was a massive, massive gamble. Like, he was injured. We didn't know what version of
expect.
Kawhi we were gonna get,
Mm.
and we didn't know if he was gonna stay. And like, he didn't stay.
And he
but
left,
like,
right?
yeah,
So no
yeah,
championship, and he leaves. Like that
yeah.
would have left a
Yeah.
even bigger sour
So
taste.
yeah, it was a massive, massive gamble. It was insane. I remember not being. I didn't think it was real because all this. You always read all these little headlines and half of them are bullshit. But then when it came in and it really hit me, like, I didn't know. I wasn't with the trade in the beginning, but then like it took me a minute, and then I was like, okay, Kawhi Leonard.
It took you half the season, bro. Be honest. Like,
No, like
I remember.
It did take a
in
while.
my head,
It
I
did take a
knew.
while.
Like in my head, I know. Like, okay, Kawhi Leonard is a better player. But like to let go of the dude, like we watched that kid grow up, and we watched him put everything he had on the court. Like in the end, it wasn't good enough, and I'm okay with that. But I like it's just, man, it was.
I think you'd be even more
feeling.
pissed if we didn't win, right? Like, if we didn't win the chip.
Oh, for sure. I think we all would.
That's
Right?
what I'm saying. This
And I
conversation would
think
be completely different.
And that's where my like when I heard about the trade, I was like, okay, we're trading away this guy who's all about Toronto for a guy who really just came with a question mark, right? I think the year before he was injured quite a bit and he didn't play, right? So I'm like, okay, we just traded away our franchise player at the time for an unknown. And then like that was one thing. And then the other thing is like with Kawhi, you know he's a talent, right? Like everybody knows, like if you could get back to what he was, you know, I felt like, okay, if we can get the Kawhi from the season before his injury season, we could win the chip, right? Like let's be honest, like it went from like, you know, a crazy sad moment to like, holy shit, like we got probably like the top 3 player in the league easily, right? And by the end of the season, he was on, like, couldn't even argue, like he was the best player in the league, right? At the end of the playoff run there where we won, right? So it was just like, it was a wave of emotions for me.
I think just going along those lines, I think caught off guard initially because the whole, as JV mentioned, DeMar was like locked, like he was untouchable in a sense, and then they pulled the trigger. The biggest question for me was like Kawhi's health. Like, would he actually be healthy enough to play? And at the same time, would he show up to play? You know, rewinding back to the whole Vince Carter trade, half the people that we were supposed to get didn't even play. So for me, it was like, I don't know if a superstar like Kawhi wants to come up north and, you know, play in Toronto. And just the whole kerfuffle that was happening with San Antonio, like, does he play? Does he not play? Like, I don't know what kind of version of Leonard we were going to get. And like D alluded to, like we're trading away a franchise player who's healthy, who's constantly getting better for, again, like a question mark. But at the end of the day, I think enough was enough. Like, you know, DeMar, yeah, he did what he could, but unfortunately when he came against LeBron and Cleveland, it just wasn't enough. So cahoots to Masai, you know, for, you know, digging down deep and pulling the trigger. So yeah, initially it was kind of like, oh, why did this happen? However, you know, for what we got, personally, it was a quick change because I think it was time for change, and to get arguably the best two-way player in the league when healthy, that just skyrocketed our chances, you know, to win the championship. And we all know, you know, the rest is history. So the wave of emotions, definitely. And like AK mentioned, I mean, if we didn't win the championship, this would be a whole different conversation.
I mean, for me, when I first heard it, I was like, this is fake news. I mean, the Spurs, there is no way that Pop is making this deal. And the more that I heard about it, I was like, oh man, this is actually happening. And my feeling began to change into like excitement of the possibility of getting a Kawhi Leonard. Yes, there was questions about the injuries. Yes, he had only played about 9 games. Yes, there were that whole thing of like him bailing on such a model franchise in San Antonio, right? So there's all that as well. And I agree with Nabil. Was he going to report? I didn't get comfort. Like, as much as the trade had gone down, I didn't feel comfort until I saw that photo where it was like Bobby Webster, Kawhi, and Masai in the gym together.
That's right. Yeah.
And then even then I was like, bro, is this Photoshop? Like, this guy's
You're
actually
here?
here. This guy's actually here in the building. Okay, this is wild. And he actually looks in good shape and stuff. So like it looks like he's
Smiling,
healthy
yeah.
and stuff. And like, yeah, go a Kawhi type smile too, right? In terms of the amount of emotion he shows as like a cyborg and a robot. But I was just like, man, okay, we're getting this guy. I think to Nabil's point as well, enough was enough in the sense where it must have been so tough for Masai to pull that trigger, knowing kind of also the family dynamic that had been created within the Raptors organization. But at the end of the day, what would Masai always say, right? We play to win, and he always said we are going to win a championship here in Toronto. And what a risk and a gamble to take, but the reward is amazing. You get back an amazing two-way player. The discussion of quote unquote probably the best player in the game when he just doesn't decide to load manage all the time, but it's like just the ability that you get, and we saw it in the playoffs. It was just a fairy tale, and it just worked out in that sense. I think
So-
also credit to DeMar, man. Sorry, go ahead, Daryl.
No, I was gonna say, so like I know DeMar's even said like he considers himself the sacrificial lamb, right? Like, do you guys agree with that? Like he was just
Well,
caught
we
in the
don't have another
crossfire?
player that would bag us.
Well, that's the
Kawhi
thing
Leonard.
though, and
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
point. DeMar's skill level and where he had gotten to each year, getting incrementally better. helped us net Kawhi. There wasn't anyone else maybe within that package. Like, it wasn't Pirtle that got us Kawhi.
No.
Like, I love Jakob Pirtle. He did his.
Pirtle was nice though, man. Like the year before,
He was nice. He was
Pirtle
nice.
was nice, bro.
he's got
But
soft hands, bro.
yeah,
Soft hands for like a 7-footer.
but him for a Finals MVP, bro. Like, it's two
Yeah.
different things.
Injured
But,
Finals MVP.
right. And
That
I
was,
think,
yeah.
and I think that's what got us Kawhi as well. That that injury question mark was there. But yeah, if DeMar wasn't as good as he was, the Spurs also, and if his character wasn't what it was, the Spurs probably also don't say yes to that deal. So shout out to Bobby Webster for like connecting with the assistant GM from the Spurs and just making that deal happen, and even doing all the background work on the medicals and all that stuff. So, man, like, I shifted real fast. Like, I love DeMar,
Yeah,
but I
same.
shifted real quick into that excitement mode and what can be, because as a Raptors fan, I was getting fed up, man. I was getting fed up with the constant losing. I was getting fed up with the LeBronto nonsense. It was so many things that were just like psychologically, as a Raptors fan, you're starting to think like, this is BS, man. Like, we're still dealing with the same stuff year and year again. So, it was that was my take on Kawhi and the trade as a whole.
And there was just the, we all saw the difference too. Like exactly like you were saying, like DeMar could win games for us, but like seeing what Kawhi could do, he could just flip the switch, and you knew like the next 4 minutes Kawhi's taking over. No one's stopping him. He's gonna put all the defensive stops. He's gonna get in there for steals. He's gonna get his shots. Like, we all saw that difference. He was just another level, I guess.
Yeah, just to expand on like what Pan said when he's like, he did what he could, and he did. Like, I think he did what he could while he was here. But again, if we go back through the playoff series, yeah, we made it 5 times, but 3 of those 5 times were exited by sweeps. And even like one sweep, to me, it's a red flag that something's wrong with that team and something needs to change. Like, obviously I would have changed a coach first. And again, this is why I said I could never be a GM. Like, but when that deal's on the table, you have to do it. I personally wouldn't have been able to do it, but I'm just a horrible GM. But I'd roll with him. But you have to do that trade. Like, it's Kawhi Leonard. Like,
sorry, and I don't know if you guys got the feeling though. Maybe I'm speaking a lot, but in that 2018, when they got swept by Cleveland, they were the number 1 seed. Cleveland was number 4. I don't know if y'all got a feeling like towards the end of that series, like something may change, just because they didn't seem like they were into it, like be it with KC or be it with a player. But I felt like, there is going to be a change this offseason, the way we exited the playoffs.
I thought Lowry was going to get traded.
Yeah, that's
if I'm being honest, right? Like,
I did too. Yeah.
Like, usually if it's DeMar and Lowry, like, I think, okay, Lowry goes first just because DeMar was with us for so long from the beginning, right?
And he's younger.
So that's right. But surprisingly, it was DeMar, right? And like, obviously because he was, what the Spurs want. No one really wanted Kyle, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
I think
but they
also
looked broken at the end of that series. Like, they just looked like they were broke.
They were deflated. Yeah, you could see the change.
What are you guys doing? Like, yeah, there was no fight in them at the end of that series.
Well, did you guys also find it absurd that KC benched DeMar?
Yeah.
Like I mean,
that's when some red flags went up, right?
That's when it really
holy
spoke
shit.
to me. Like, yes, DeMar wasn't playing as well, but it's like, you ride or die with the horses that you have, and like, that's your two-headed monster in Lowry and DeMar. So you leave it all out there. Like, I found that to be baffling coaching in the playoffs, and like, I don't even want to revisit those days because it was just like kind of screaming at the TV, wondering what this guy's doing. But I think that was the rift. That was essentially like, you sensed that there was something in the air that was going to happen.
So that year, although we hate on Casey a lot, I was still like usually given the benefit of the doubt until that year when we played Washington in the series before, in the round before that. And I remember Washington was basically busted and devastated. Like, we should have easily handled them, and it went 6 games. And there was just one. There's a couple plays at the end of that one of those games where Bradley Beal had got 5 fouls. He was like the highest scoring player. He was doing all kinds of damage. He got 5 fouls. There's like 2 minutes left, and we're ISO heavy team. And then for 2 minutes, there is not one ISO play against Bradley Beal, and then I think we end up going to overtime in that game. And I'm like, as a coach, what are you doing? Like, that's just like some basic things that should be done. And then I think that just snapped for me. I'm like, they need to fire this guy. Like, and then he went on to get swept in the next round. So it's all good.
I think to John's point as well, the caliber of player that Kawhi is, we saw that in DeMar's return to Toronto when it was a back and forth, um, high scoring game, and then in crunch time, it was like a quick double at the end by Kyle and Kawhi, and they stripped DeMar of the ball, and Kawhi takes it in for like a layup slash dunk, and that to me was the picture. That to me, for anyone who is doubting the trade, there it is, boys and girls. That is why you make that trade, because when it's crunch time, when it's the moment, man, you don't go against the claw. No
Man,
chance.
I was happy we won, but I'm like, I was sad that it happened to DeMar though,
Yeah.
right? Like it was like one of those things,
Yeah.
you know?
That's how it was written, man. And that kind of shows the difference. And no disrespect to DeMar, but I think that's the difference between a superstar and a star in the league. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, because we all saw it. Like you could see the difference. You could literally see it on a nightly basis. You're like, yep, as John said,
On-off
Like, this
switch,
is-
man. You can.
yeah,
Bro, that ball got snatched. Like,
snatched. And
No, just
But it was
Clyde,
Lowry,
man.
too, right?
Give me that.
his decision making, his confidence in the shot, his IQ, knowing when to take over and when to sit back, and it's definitely a difference. What sucks that it came at DeMar's expense.
Yeah.
Let's think about that though. I want to throw something out to the group. I know we have another piece that I'm going to touch on before we close off in terms of how DeMar ranks in terms of the Raptor GOAT, in terms of the Raptor GOAT conversation. But I want to throw this out to you guys. Casey gets fired. DeMar gets traded. How do we do if DeMar stays and is guided by Nick Nurse? What is kind of like our crystal ball thinking in terms of how maybe the playoffs and the playoff run goes last year with DeMar instead of Kawhi, with Nick Nurse as the head?
I think you get more plays out of DeMar, definitely, and you get proper timeouts, for sure. I just think he would have used them way better, right? Coming off screens, all that stuff. Like Nick Nurse is a genius, man. Like when it comes to that, really kind of isolating on a player's skill set and exposing it, right? So there's no question. Like I mean, we don't know the final outcome. Will we win a championship? I don't know, right? Will we have done better than the previous year? 100%, right? I just think Casey was just. There were moments it's like, is this really like an NBA coach, right? Like, and I just feel like Nick would have utilized him way better.
I agree. His scoring average would have gone way up because he's not forced to do this ISO and one-on-one.
Correct.
Like
yeah.
he would have just gotten way easier buckets, way more.
Right. Just coming off screens.
Pascal came along too, right? So don't forget that
Yeah.
Pascal would have lightened the load for him, right? Like,
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
you're also forgetting no LeBron in the East.
No LeBron in the East.
yeah.
So, I mean, there would have
I'd
been
say
a
we
lot
go
of
to
things.
the conference finals, like if we're being honest. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think we could have gone back to the finals. I don't know in the finals what we would have done. I think we've still done pretty well, but I don't know if we would have won. Like we might have.
I definitely think you would have gotten more out of DeMar with Nick Nurse, but I'm just trying to think in my head, like in the crucial plays where Kawhi really turned it up, could you have gotten DeMar to turn it up like that?
Fourth quarter.
Like against Philly, like those shots over Embiid, against Milwaukee, like he was just rolling. Like I'm not comparing players, but definitely Nick Nurse as a coach with the correct timeouts and scenarios would have made it better for DeMar. But player caliber wise, I'm not sure. But it would have been nice to see.
The clutch shots, I still say I would have preferred Lowry to take them, but I mean I think DeMar would have still been able to get you in the ballpark to hit those shots.
And who knows, maybe Nurse would have done a play to give it to Lowry instead
There
of
you
DeMar,
go.
right?
Crazy thoughts.
For sure. I mean, it could have got. I would have loved to have seen that though, because I mean, was he with Casey his whole career? No, he started with another coach.
I think he got Casey like a year or two in.
But it would have been nice to see how he would have developed or gotten improved under a coach who, quote unquote, knew what he was kind of doing in certain situations.
Not that Casey didn't know at all what he's. I think he's great with players. I think he's great with getting players to put their maximum effort on the floor. It's just I don't think he guided that effort in the right direction. Like that was my beef with him.
I think with Nurse as well, it would have lightened the load on DeMar, where like our offense was so predictable.
Yeah.
Like you just knew it was either going to be in Lowry's hands or it was going to be in DeMar's hands. With Nurse's offense and just that equal opportunity offense that he's running, everyone's touching the ball, and maybe DeMar goes back to like almost a slashing, making more cuts, backdoor cuts, easier baskets, and that will also conserve his energy come crunch time as well. I think Nurse made a comment prior to DeMar being traded, because like Nurse had been hired as the coach and they were planning, and basically Nurse said, I'm looking to even put DeMar on the other team's best player to get him engaged early. So almost to light a fire under him to say like, look, man, I believe in you. I think you can play some defense. I just don't know if you've been pushed to do that yet. I don't know if anyone's ever challenged you to take that on as like, I'm going to go after whoever the best player is. I'm going to attack them on the offensive end, and I'm going to make them work when they're trying to score on me. So it would have been interesting. To Nabil's point, it's kind of like hindsight. You just wonder what might have been, but it's just an interesting dynamic. If DeMar had been able to be coached by such an innovative mind in Nurse, and what might that have entailed? I just wonder, come playoff time, would it have been too much? Whether it's Philly or Milwaukee, because Kawhi's defense, unlike a guy like Simmons, Kawhi's defense and shot making ability against the Bucks, when as soon as you put him on Giannis, John, no offense.
No, I remember. Yeah, Game 3, man. Game 3 changed it all.
Exactly. Like Giannis started to have nightmares, and it was a wrap, right? Like it was just too much. So I think that's the dynamic where you wouldn't be able to put DeMar in that same position, and that maybe would have been our downfall in the playoffs. Maybe Eastern Conference Finals as our ceiling again, right? So.
Yeah, I think for a championship we would still probably needed one more caliber player. You know what I mean? Like caliber of DeMar or Lowry's caliber to push us over the top.
Yeah, and I think that's the great unknown, the fact that LeBron was also out of the East. So like it's just like, okay, we've ran into the roadblock of LeBron, he's gone. It's almost like I think DeMar almost must have felt, you didn't give me a chance to try to come out of the East when the best player is no longer in the East, and you didn't give me a chance to run through that. So it's kind of like who knows, right? Who knows what would have happened?
That's true, but sorry to cut you off there,
go ahead, Bill.
But just elaborating on that conversation, where he went to, it's not like he got a second-rate coach. Like we're talking about Greg Popovich.
Great point.
Who is probably one of the greatest coaches of all time, arguably top 3. So I mean, I don't know if you guys follow his career in San Antonio.
I do.
How much has he changed? Like, you know what I mean? Definitely, it's a different system.
He's improved a lot, man.
Like Aldridge is garbage, man. Like he hasn't improved since the
Thank
first
you.
season.
Thank you.
No, I understand that. His surroundings may not be the greatest. He probably had a better supporting cast up in Toronto. But I'm saying, if it's not coach heavy, but if you think about it, like I don't know how he's doing in San Antonio, but you got to see what, Greg Popovich, what he's doing to kind of help maybe fix or tweak things that DeMar DeRozan maybe not have been as great at under KC.
Well, definitely. Like he's averaging 22 points on 50% shooting, which is higher than any of the years that he played with us. He's averaging 52% this season, averaging 6 rebounds is career high, and 6 assists career high, basically.
Pretty good.
So like those are like stark improvements on significantly less shots per game. He's averaging basically the same the same amount of points that he was averaging with us.
It's also a different system.
More efficient. He's becoming more efficient, basically, in essence. Mm-hmm. And just to touch on the previous subject, I think, not to focus too much on Kawhi, but even the fact of of course, we know it's offensive and defensive, but when you get that kind of level, just like with Giannis, you get an offensive and defensive, that changes everything on the floor. So in terms of what Kawhi brought, you know what I mean? That level, that next stage compared to what DeRozan had, I would say if Nick Nurse was coaching him, he probably, I don't know if they would get past Milwaukee, only because that level of defense that they did put up and change. Maybe they would have, because I don't know how DeMar would have developed.
John, he got past Milwaukee already with DeMar.
Yeah,
That's true.
I'm saying last year's Milwaukee.
And you're gonna say then you're gonna say an improved DeMar, like Pan was saying, he was gonna put him on the defensive end, and if Nick Nurse could take away his energy expended on the offensive end, you don't know what the guy's ceiling could be. Like
It's
if you're
possible.
saying, yeah.
I just don't know if he would have to take a huge leap though, like from where he was to get to Kawhi's level, like in one season. I don't know if that's
Well, there's a lot of hypotheticals because technically,
Yeah.
if there's no Kawhi, maybe Pascal Siakam plays next level like he is this season.
Exactly.
Don't get me wrong. His
Yeah.
tutelage,
True.
his
Yeah,
tutelage
that's
under
true.
Kawhi last year maybe helped skyrocket that.
Yeah.
But then you see, if Nurse is there as a head coach, DeMar, he's gonna rely on somebody. So maybe Spicy Peace steps up heavily. So I mean, there's a lot of hypotheticals.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a 7-game series instead of a 6.
For the Raptors.
With the unknown, like I will say, okay, fine, maybe an unknown, like we wouldn't have known the outcome, but I don't think Milwaukee would stomp over.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It'd be closer for sure, yeah. But yeah, Kawhi's defense, like, and even spreading to everyone else, right? Like that frame of mind that every other player has taken on and is with us this year. That was impressive. Like that's
He did bring a defensive mindset, and then it's carried over.
It's
to
carried
now.
over,
Like
man.
we're the
Yeah.
defensive
It's
team. Like that's what we're known for.
Yep. You guys think DeMar's getting traded from Spurs? It's a big question mark, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Spurs, I don't know what since they made that LaMarcus Aldridge, since they made that pitch to him, I feel like they've just been making wrong move after wrong move after wrong move. Like I don't understand why they went for LA.
I know.
You got to remember though, like their third, like it was supposed to be a three-headed monster, right? With the DeJounte Murray, right? Is that his name? He was supposed to be a stud too, right? So he got injured before the season even started, right?
Yeah.
So that changed like the whole dynamic, whatever Pop had planned. So they haven't had their full squad, right, to really see what they can do.
They gotta figure out Aldridge, man.
Yeah, man, because he likes to shoot in the same spots as DeMar.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Not as good. I was like,
All bad percentage shots. But,
yeah.
I just think with the Spurs right now, to Nabil's point, yes, DeMar's under the tutelage of probably one of the greatest coaches ever in Pop as well. I think it's just the way that roster is made up. It just doesn't make
It doesn't
sense.
jive.
It just it's like almost like an awkward puzzle that they've put together. Like they have like 10 million guards. I see like Bryn Forbes. I see this other guy, Patty Mills. I see DeMar. I see DeJounte Murray, who's like a hybrid of a point guard / shooting guard who's just
Italian
as tall
guy.
as DeMar. Like, what is your roster? Like, it's almost like 5 guys playing the same position.
Don't they have Bellinelli too? Is that Bellinelli?
Yeah, that's
Bellinelli.
the guy.
Bellinelli,
Yeah.
like
Bellinelli,
another shooting guard. Like there's like 6 guys playing DeMar's position. Like it's like
And
I
your
don't
big
understand
man
the
wants to
makeup.
shoot mid-range free throws. Like, what do you? I hate that turnaround that he has. I know it goes in a lot, but I just hate it.
I think the Spurs are fighting the element of fatigue because so many seasons of making the playoffs, having amazing runs, a dynasty as well. You lose a Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Parker. You've won so many championships. And Pop looks tired, man. Pop looks tired. He's put in his work. Pop has nothing left to prove. So it's like, how much more longer does he want to babysit the baby Spurs? That's on him as well. And to Anwar's point, DeMar, I think he needs to come to the East, man. There's too many good guards in the
He
West.
needs to come back to Toronto, man. I'm telling you.
That
Make
could
it
be a
right.
possibility.
Honestly, I'd be fine with that.
That'd be amazing. I'd love that.
It kind of depends on who you give up for him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man.
Good
Yeah,
deal.
When's he a free agent? When's he a free agent?
he sounded.
I think he's due. Like he's coming up. Like I think in terms of there's
Yeah,
like
a year or two maybe.
I want to say, I think a year.
is he restricted or like he's probably a restricted free agent this year maybe. But
I don't know. I can't remember. I have to check.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind him back in Toronto. Just depends who we give up.
Not even for basketball, man. Just to reunite Kyle and DeMar, just to see the shenanigans off the court. Like I miss that, man.
what
like,
if the trade is DeMar for Kyle?
camaraderie.
But he comes
No,
back.
come on. Like,
He's not number one.
add another guard to the Spurs. Right? Like,
Guard heavy, man. Look at the Houston Rockets. They're going small ball.
they're looking for their Tony Parker, right?
Tony
Like,
Parker,
And how's that working out for them?
Yeah, you know what? Here it is. At end of 2021, he'll be a free agent. Yep.
Oh, okay. So
When
next
you
year,
say 2020?
2021.
2021.
Oh,
Not
okay.
far.
Yeah,
Let them
crazy
trade him.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
but I
see.
think just in the West, man, too many good guards. And
Yeah.
when will DeMar make another All-Star appearance with such a loaded crop of guards? Like, I don't see it happening unless he comes back to the East.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why he gets traded back here. So, last point that I wanted to bring up, guys. Where does DeMar rank in the Raptors GOAT conversation in terms of his overall legacy? I know Anwar kind of touched on top three. Where does he fit in for you guys?
1, 2. Him and Kyle.
I agree.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
agree.
like I said, that was great. It was great. Like, mine's like 1 to 3. Slot him anywhere in that. Number 1, 2, or 3, man.
What about Bargnani? What do you mean? You guys?
No, he's
He's off the list, bro.
Bargnani's after
Number one for
Araujo,
Primo
actually.
Pasta.
yeah, Primo
How
Pasta.
about this, Anwar? Make you happy.
Yeah,
1,
yeah.
2, and then Vince would be 3 for me.
My man. What?
There you go. Okay?
Especially today. Today, a big day today, right?
But I hear people talking crazy, like ranking Vince above Kyle or DeMar.
No,
man, you can't do that.
I don't do
And honestly, it's a toss-up between Vince and Chris. Like I wouldn't be mad if he was 3 and Chris was 4.
Yeah.
No, let's
True.
just stop at you putting him at 3. That's a big
Yeah.
moment, man.
It's huge, bro. on the day that the man retires, it's big. It's big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
so let him, like I said, DeMar has a good, 7 years left. We can wait. We can wait to retire that man's number till after DeMar.
Yeah, see, for me, if you base it on like longevity and stats and everything that they brought to the table, like you got to go Kyle Lowry first because he has that ring.
Yeah.
Honestly, for me, it would be a toss-up between Vince or DeMar for number 2. But with the longevity and what DeMar did for the franchise during their difficult times, probably would have to put him slightly above Vince at number 2, and Vince Carter at number 3, and we won't worry about the rest actually.
I'll take a page from the book and I'll go Lowry, DeMar, and Bosch and Vince. I know he's retiring, but
I'm right. You stay strong, John.
I'm sticking with it.
I'm proud
Oh
of you.
man, I think
The hate, bro. The hate deep.
the hate is
Heavily.
I'm gonna go with Lowry, DeMar, and I'll give Vince 3. I'll give Vince 3 because I will
agree with that.
I will rate Vince over Bosch all day. Bosch, just stop. Just no dice.
No, I like Bosch though. Like,
No, man, Bosch
Okay,
was
then
good
you
for
can
us
put him
too.
on your list because he's not. He's sniffing maybe 6 for me. right?
5, bro. 5. Come on, 5.
Oh.
5, bro. 5.
Who else? Who else? would it be?
Who's ahead of him?
He's a French
would-
5. He's a French 5.
I would put Kawhi at 4.
I was
Although he
gonna
was
say
only here for
4,
a
yeah.
year, but he
Yeah.
got us a chip, which nobody else could do in the time they were here.
Exactly.
4, and then Bosch is 5th.
And then
Yeah.
I'll give
Fine,
Bosch number
fine.
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's between Bosch and like Morris Peterson at 5.
Random question: Who has a better career, Chris Bosch or Vince Carter?
Ooh.
Overall
I mean,
career.
Overall career, I say Chris Bosch.
He won a
Bosch for
championship,
sure.
man.
Yeah, without a
championships,
question.
back to
Bosch
back,
has a
4 or 5.
championship.
Back-to-back championships. Yeah. I can't argue that, man.
We should dive into that further in our next episode
fair
when
enough.
we have a chance to discuss this in terms
Yeah.
of comparing Raptors in the future. So, yeah, guys. So thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Court, episode 10, number 10 for number
My
10,
guy.
DeMar DeRozan. Exactly 11 years ago to the day that he was drafted by the Toronto Raptors from the USC Trojans, DeMar DeRozan. So great episode, guys. Great insight. Don't forget to check us out on our Instagram, Beyond the Court _podcast. Don't forget to hit the like button on the subscribe button there. And take care. Stay safe. Be blessed.